It's so great to see everybody.
Kate and Lee, some of my friends. Hello. I'm lonely for everybody. Now that we're not doing an active program right now, it's so boring around here. But not tonight. We're not going to be bored tonight. No, indeed.
Nova Scotia, Boulder, Arkansas, Alaska, uh, New York, Washington, Canada, Mexico. Awesome. It's a great range of people here today. So I am guessing that you're excited to learn about medicinal mushrooms from Christopher Hobbs. So one more technical thing before we jump in, before Karis takes over here. Abby and I will be in the chat hanging out, available to troubleshoot. If you get booted from Zoom for any reason at all, you can send us an email at botanicwise@gmail.com. So when you registered, you would have gotten an email from us and you can respond. We'll be watching that in case anybody has any technical problems. And we are recording and we'll send out the replay as soon as we get it all ready. So with that, I just want to thank everybody and turn this over to Karis, who's going to introduce Chris and BotanicWise.
So welcome everybody. Thanks so much, Ryan. It's so great to have you here. And I just want to welcome everybody to our free BotanicWise event for the month. And if you're already in our community, then you're in the groove of the event type of events that we host. But if you are not in the community yet, you'll get an invitation tomorrow with the replay, because that's where we'll post a replay. That doesn't cost anything to be part of the community. It just keeps us all together so that we can watch these events together, but also we can have conversation about the event following the event, including if you have questions for Christopher following, tomorrow, maybe you might have a question after the event that occurs to you. You can pop into the BotanicWise community and you can post that and tag Christopher, and I'll make sure he answers your question. So I'll keep him accountable, keep him paying attention. So let's move into the introduction of our host. I'm so pleased that my friend and mentor, Dr. Christopher Hobbs, is joining us tonight. He's a research scientist, he's a botanist, he's an herbal clinician, and a mushroom advocate and fanatic. And as long as I've known him, he's been talking about mushrooms to me as much as he's been talking about plants. I think he has a special place in his heart for mushrooms and insects too, just a little FYI. He also has over 40 years of experience in herbal medicine, and he's the author of more than 20 books, including the newly released, absolutely phenomenal guide called Medicinal Mushrooms, the Essential Guide. And it is a fantastically beautiful book. If you don't have it, we'll post the link so that you can order it. I don't receive any commission for saying that. I'm suggesting it because it's a really, Christopher, I think it might be one of your best books yet. It's really quite amazing. So,
it's official. I received the award yesterday.
Yes, so Christopher received an award from the yesterday from the American Botanical Council for both the most scientifically accurate, prolific book, as well as the most popular. So not only is it going to teach you a lot, but it's just a fun book to have in your hands and start looking at. So perfect book to crawl into bed with or take wherever you go. So Christopher, I'm going to pass the baton to you and let you get started on your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Ryan and Karis and Abby and all the BotanicWise staff for inviting me and hosting this event. I'm very grateful. And I'm so glad to see all of you here, and hopefully we'll have some fun fungal times here.
Before you really get going, I have one more thing to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Pledging in. I just wanted to remind people that Christopher is also teaching at the International Herb Symposium next month, which is a virtual event. BotanicWise is a sponsor for that event. And at the end of the session tonight, we're going to raffle off a free ticket to the event. So you don't have to stick around to win. Anybody who registered is on the spin the dial. So stick around for the fun at the end. It's really fun when Abby spins it. And hopefully you'll win. All right, that's
Okay.
enough of me.
All right, I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully it'll work and we can wake up to fungi here, or fungi. I noticed that in let's see, share, present. Hope everyone can see the first slide. I noticed that, you know, how do you pronounce fungi or fungi? I noticed that Merlin Sheldrake, in his new book, which is just a fantastic book, and I can certainly highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in how mushrooms make connections between trees and shrubs and all plants and help them share resources. Merlin Sheldrake, he says fungi, and I've always heard people in this country anyway say fungi. So either one doesn't really matter, does it? There's my book that's available now, and I'm so thrilled with it. Story Publishing did just a fantastic job. So full of beautiful artistic color pictures almost on every page. And the scientific literature, if you're interested in, well, does reishi really have any clinical trials showing that it helps boost the immune system against cancer, for instance, or benefit the respiratory tract, then I detail them all. And it's done by the publisher very kind of subtly. The numbers, the superscripts are kind of small, you can read them, but it doesn't really break up the text with lots of authors' names and so forth. So I want to present the kingdom fungi here, or fungi. I kind of like fungi, actually. Fungi are closer to animals than plants, which is why if you have toenail fungus and you take an antifungal from the prescription, it actually can harm your kidneys. So it's well known that if you have toenail fungus, the medication can be toxic to some people, to many people. And that's because our cells are much closer to fungi than plants. But you can see here, let me get my pointer if I can get, let me see if I can get a pointer on here. I really like having a pointer. Nope, I guess I'm not going to be able to get it. Anyway, hopefully you can see my cursor. Sometimes you can get a red pointer. Fungi, the most common, the most recent common ancestor here, you can see at this juncture, this is called a phylogeny or a family tree. That so fungi and animals diverged many millions of years ago, but then plants diverged way before that even, and then you've got the more simple organisms down there. There are many types of fungi, fleshy fungi, polypores that you'll see, hard conchs, microscopic fungi, for instance, yeasts. You may not know, but yeast is a type of fungi. It's a single-celled fungi. And penicillin and many of the antibiotics that we use are purified from soil fungi, such as penicillin. Well, that's also on bread, but streptomycin, for instance. Now, I wanted to take a moment of reflection, and then just to kind of get the discussion going here, and maybe put us all in the mood for fungi. I wanted you to think of a time that you were in a forest, and I'm just wondering how many of us go out and look for fungi right now, are already excited about fungi and want to get out there and look for fruiting bodies. That's only a part, that's the kind of like the apple of the apple tree in a way. It's like the fruiting body, and we can cut the fruiting body, but underground or in the tree, there's still all this mycelium growing and consuming the wood and recycling it. So if you can think of the last time you're in a forest, and it's very easy for me to think of that because I was just in the forest yesterday, spent most of the day in a forest yesterday. And the smells of the trees and the conifers and the smell of, especially in the fall and winter, the smell of the damp leaves underfoot that are kind of decaying and recycling. And I can smell the fungi in the woods. If there's fungi around, like chanterelles or boletes, you can actually smell them in the air. If you're really attuned and you're really, if we can empty our mind and just walk and really just feel the stillness and the aromatics of the forest, the feeling of the duff. And then if you find a mushroom, the smell of the mushroom, the feel of it on your fingers, it has texture, has smell, has taste, maybe taste a little tiny piece of it. So when you go to a forest and you're looking and you see fungi, or just in a forest, how are you feeling? And how do you think you benefit from that? And does it make a difference in your life? And do you feel more connected to the natural world in general? And what does that mean to you? So these are all questions that I frequently ask myself when I'm forest bathing in the forest and looking for mushrooms. And to be honest with you, I love eating chanterelles and I love eating porcini. On the other hand, if I don't find any, I'm perfectly fine, because I just love so much walking in the woods, putting my boots on, tramping through the wet woods and maybe through a creek, and just all the smells. And I just get so excited that when I leave, I feel so much more alive in many ways and connected. So anyway, ponder that. And if you want to add your thoughts and feelings to the chat, then please do so. Now, here are some fantastic fungal facts. Fungi have been around for a long time, and recently they pushed back the time that we know about when fungi had arose on the planet to about 1 billion years ago, 1.3 billion. So they've been around for a long, long time, and we're so interconnected with them in the sense of our bodies are used to having fungi inside of them. We know about probiotics and the human biome, a lot of different bacteria, but there are also fungi and viruses inside resident in our body. And one of the most fantastic things about these resident microbes that are in our body, and by the way, fungi are in all plants too. They inhabit the leaves, just and pretty much many parts of the plant, besides they're completely interconnected with all the roots. But they're in the leaves, and so there's a whole group of a biome, fungal biome, inside the plant leaves, and these are benefiting from the sugars that the plant is producing through photosynthesis. But also the fungi are adding, they're creating very protective compounds for the plant. Interestingly, many of the famous plant constituents like Taxol that helps fight cancer cells are actually, instead of being produced by the plant, they're produced by the fungi in the plant. So this has really come to light in the last number of years. So fungi interconnect all the individuals together, and they help the trees share nutrients. So when the broadleaf trees have their leaves on in the summer and spring, they collect a lot of sun and they make a lot of sugar. However, they're kind of shading the conifers, and so they send sugars out to the conifers. In the winter, when the broadleaves lose their leaves, the conifers produce the sugar and send over to the broadleaves. So it's pretty amazing how coordinated they all are, how much of a web it is, and we're part of that web. That's what's so exciting. So mushrooms activate ancient and modern immune pathways. When we ingest a shiitake, for instance, the beta-glucans, which are large sugar molecules that are particularly branched, so that our body can recognize that this comes from fungi. When we consume those, they are taken up by our immune system, that are cells that are in our gut. You may not know, but 60 to 70% of our immune tissue is in our gut. Pretty remarkable. And so our gut is sensing everything that we eat. And when they detect fungi, then there is an exquisite and beautifully orchestrated ancient immune regulation and promotion and stimulation that happens, so that our immune system becomes more finely attuned to the environment, to potential pathogens and so forth. So this is the basis upon which medicinal fungi or fungi really help activate our immunity and protect us from viruses, protect us from cancer cells, and so forth. And this is, even though fungi have a lot of benefits and different species have different benefits, which I'll go into in a moment, it's still true that the immune boosting and the antiviral and the protective effects of fungi are really likely to be the most important. Because we don't really have drugs out there. Pharma hasn't produced any drugs that really can naturally and skillfully, as fungi do, promote our immune system to protect us against pathogens. They don't have anything that really is non-toxic and just so beautifully orchestrating like fungi are. And they're also very essential for breaking down the dead biomass of the earth, the dead trees and the leaves as they fall in the autumn. All those have to be broken down to release that carbon, to release that energy for all the other organisms to utilize. And also, I love saying and talking about mushrooms and fiber, because we need more fiber. According to a lot of research studies, we are not getting enough fiber. Fiber is the single most important protector in our diet that can help protect us against cardiovascular disease, cancer, likely, and diabetes. So we need a lot more fiber. The average person in this country gets about 15 grams of fiber a day. I'm not, probably most of us on this meeting are getting higher amounts, maybe 25, 35 grams per day. But the average person in this country gets about 15. The government is recommending 25, which is still not nearly enough. And people on a traditional diet are literally getting up to 50 or 60 grams of fiber per day. And so we need to up our game. And there's so many studies again showing that we can have a longer life and a much healthier life if we do this one thing, and that is pay attention to getting more fiber. Because fiber is literally a marker for more whole foods and more vegetable and grain-based foods. So this is a very important fact about mushrooms. Shiitake is very high in fiber. All mushrooms are extremely high in fiber, dietary fiber that we need daily. Now, some of the other health benefits of mushrooms, they don't contain much fat, or cholesterol, so they're definitely heart friendly. Again, all the fiber, there are some fatty acids in mushrooms which help reduce inflammation. There are tons of minerals, and especially trace minerals, copper, zinc, iron. Mushrooms are very, very high, one of the highest natural sources. That's a great slimming food. It's good for regulating cholesterol if your cholesterol is a bit elevated, and again, high in fiber. Here's a picture that you're seeing on the right. This is a market near Berkeley, California. It's called Monterey Market, and they are I just go crazy when I go in there because they have a very, very long aisle. This is only a part of it here that you're seeing in the picture, with so many species of edible and medicinal mushrooms for sale. So it's really exciting to go in there. Mushrooms is food. Mushrooms have been used in cuisine all over the world and still are. The black mushroom in Chinese cuisine, even schizophyllum or split gill, shiitake, of course, and so many more, lion's mane. Many of the medicinal species like lion's mane, maitake, shiitake are all very important ingredients of traditional cooking. And also they're very nutritious. Some mushrooms, like some pleurotus or oyster mushrooms, are up to 25% of high quality and usable protein. I mentioned that they're high in minerals, high in protein and fiber and low fat, and we all need to be eating more fungi. So grow your own, go out in the woods and really enjoy the forest and see what you can find. I would say that there is no real fungi season in the country. Different regions have fungi that are really actively fruiting in certain times of the year, like the summer or fall. But in the California and the western states, even the winter, we have a lot of fruiting bodies coming out up until February. So pretty much all times of the year, there are mushrooms out there in the woods. So let's talk about mushrooms as medicine, which is a really exciting aspect of mushrooms besides their nutritional benefits, besides the benefit of just going out and being in their home, in their habitats. In China and Japan, there are a lot of clinical trials that have been done on mushrooms to help support people who have cancer. And the best of the studies, the clinical trials, show that people who take, a lot of the studies are designed like this, people that have stomach cancer, for instance, maybe hundreds of people with stomach cancer, one group gets the chemo only, and the other group gets chemo and mushroom therapy or mushroom supplements. It turns out that the group who gets the chemo plus the mushroom supplements have up to 1/3, 30% higher 5-year survival rate when they are taking that. Plus, the side effects of chemo are much lower. For instance, they have more energy, they feel less nauseous, and their mood is better. So there's a lot of research on this aspect of mushrooms. They are a wonderful health supplement to take as we age, because you're not only getting the fiber, the nutrition, the protein, you're also getting a daily immune regulatory support, if you will. I use reishi almost every day, year round. I put it in smoothies and I make a tea. If I make a tea, I put a little reishi in. I use it in the powder form and I make my own powders. By the way, my book will show you step by step and show pictures of how to make your own mushroom fiber and mushroom supplements, like a double extraction and so forth, step by step. They are very safe and non-toxic. Mushrooms have very, very wonderful safety profiles. I prefer powders than pills because I don't like swallowing a lot of pills. Fiber, just getting bags of fiber, they ground up, cooked. They have to be cooked. They have to be steamed or cooked, and then ground up to a fine powder. And that's really the best way to take them. And then I'll get into the beta-glucans should be standardized. Here is a picture, kind of a space-filling picture here of a beta-glucan. It's part of the cell wall. It's in the triple helix form that adds flexibility to the cell wall. But this is the molecule more than any other. So there are other molecules in fungi that activate our immune response, but this is the most important and the best studied. And it's called 1316 beta-glucan. And when we ingest these, again, our body recognizes them right away, starts producing, and by the way, these are taken up by macrophages, immune cells in our body, and taken, and within 2 or 3 hours, you can find pieces of these beta-glucans in our bone marrow and other organs and in cancer tissue. So the immune activating compounds, the triple helixes of the beta-glucans, are taken inside of our body and have local effects besides a generalized immune stimulating effect. Here, this is a colorful view of what happens. Here's the NP. Here is the beta-glucan you might see. And so you're seeing that natural killer cells are activated. Macrophages take up the fragments of the beta-glucans and they're activated. And then on the other hand, you're getting these activated particles from macrophages. And then in turn, those are going to activate neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, mast cells, And then over on this side, adaptive, and this is innate immunity. This is onboard immunity that's always available. But over time, our adaptive immunity kicks in. It takes a little longer, but our adaptive immunity can recognize these beta-glucan particles for a long time, perhaps years. And the next time that they're exposed to these activated beta-glucan particles, they can start producing antibodies to viruses and other pathogens very, very quickly. So it's really, to study the immune system is really a fun activity, in my opinion, and in my experience. I love reading about how our immune system works, and it's so intricate and so amazingly sensitive to our environment. So let's talk about some products. It's wonderful to go out and pick your own turkey tails. Here's some turkey tails right here. I should have had this, let me open up this package here so that you can actually see it better. These are turkey tails here. I didn't cut it quite all the way through. Okay, these are turkey tails right here, and these are cultivated. You can see that on the bottom of the turkey tails are kind of snow white, and they have a textured pore surface there, and then they're kind of zonate cap here. So this is Trametes versicolor, or turkey tails. These are cultivated, but you can also, they grow everywhere in the world pretty much. These are very important medicinal mushrooms, and these are the ones that have the most clinical research of any species. So those are really good, and you can often find them in the wild. And then reishi, here's a fantastic reishi. This is Ganoderma sichuanensis, which is one of the larger ones. The stem was cut here. This is also cultivated. And then you're seeing a smaller one here. This is Ganoderma lingzhi. So this is probably the ancient one that was used in Asia for the main medicine. This is one of the most commonly cultivated ones today, is Ganoderma lingzhi. But these are different types of reishi. Here's a black reishi, which is really amazing, also cultivated. Some of these you can find in the wild. Now, the one thing about the beta-glucan, they are the most important active ingredient of mushrooms, but remember that some of the fungal products out there that are produced in capsule and powder form, the fungi, mycelium, is grown on cooked brown rice and other grains. And they're produced that way because it's so easy to produce mycelium that way. Now, mycelium is not any better or worse than fruiting bodies, in my opinion, and I discuss that in great detail in my book. But what is important is that you want as much fungal biomass as you can get. You don't want any of the rice residue in your product. You don't want to pay for brown rice, because you can just buy brown rice a lot cheaper and cook your own pot of brown rice. So you don't want to pay $20, $30 for a bottle that has 40, 50% brown rice. And this is the case in some instances, that you will buy a product and there's a significant amount of undigested rice in the product. So that's something to be very aware of. Whereas some companies now are starting to guarantee a certain amount of beta-glucans. I think it's really great if you can get a product that guarantees 15% beta-glucans at least. Many products are high in starch, and we don't want those. So there's a way that you can test your own products, and I'll bring that up in a minute. Use brands that you trust, of course. And there are a lot of brands that are selling reishi products online. There are small manufacturers. I like supporting small manufacturers, but just make sure that they are reputable. Call them if necessary. Test their products with the starch test, which I'll mention in a minute. And of course, I prefer organically, and I like domestically grown personally over those products where the mushrooms are grown in Asia or other places, because personally, I don't feel that I can be as confident about how they were grown, the organic process, the standardization, just the rules and regulations around organic. Now here's something that you can do at home. This is called a starch test. It's classic starch test. And all you need is a bottle of iodine. So get a bottle of iodine. You can get it off of I've got iodine here, but anyway, you can see it right here. Iodine solution. You want a bottle of iodine solution. It's not expensive. Then if you have, say, lion's mane capsules or reishi capsules, you buy a product that you read about online, open up a couple of those capsules and stir it into a little glass. Here I've got a beaker, but stir it into a little glass of water. It should be amber colored like this. You're seeing the picture right here. So this is what it's going to look like. And then you go ahead and put a dropper full of the iodine solution in. Iodine, like starch, is a polymer that has gaps in it, and the iodine will actually bind into these gaps of the starch and turn it bright blue. So if your solution turns bright blue like this, you know it is full of starch, and that's not a product that I would use. If it turns purple like this, it means it has a significant amount of glycogen in it. And glycogen is better than starch, but it's basically mushroom glycogen. It's a way that the fungi stores energy as far as glucose goes. So it puts glucose together in a glycogen polymer. It can easily access the glucose as needed when it's going to fruit. It needs a big shot of energy. So this may have some, because it's a fungal product, it may have some amino-active properties, but not nearly as many as beta-glucan. So it's preferred to have it just stay amber colored like that. Now, some possible indications. I'm only going to cover 3 species now, but what I want to say is that we're having an incredible opportunity, a 6-week course that BotanicWise is hosting, and it's going to be really fun. I'm going to do 6 classes on different species, on cooking with mushrooms, how they work in our immune system. I'm going to go into some of the lesser known species, and I'm going to go into the clinical trials and again, cooking and making products. So it's going to be really fun. And we're having other speakers coming in too that are really known for their colorful presentations, like Daniel Winkler is going to show us cordyceps and traditional hunting of cordyceps. And it's just going to be a fantastic time, and I hope you can join us. But right now, I'm going to talk about reishi, turkey tail, especially. This basket of fungi here is just so gorgeous. You can see how beautiful they are, for one thing. Here's cordyceps militaris. Here's some shiitake. Here is yellow oyster, regular oyster mushrooms, pink oysters, reishi cultivated, and there's some other reishi in there. So mushrooms are just as beautiful as they are healthy and medicinal. So reishi is well known. Reishi is probably the most well known and popular of the medicinal mushrooms because it is so broad in its spectrum of benefits. For instance, you can use it for counteracting insomnia, to calm the spirit. I've used it in my clinic for years and years, and people would always come back and ask for more extracts because it really did help them. Reduce anxiety, help just balance the nervous system and calm the nervous system, calm the spirit, as we say in Chinese medicine. And then also chronic respiratory ailments, like if you have COPD or just chronic allergic rhinitis, then reishi can really help reduce the inflammation, and it has an antihistamine effect. Lion's mane for depression and anxiety, there are new studies on that. So for mood support and also for memory support, lion's mane is just all over Asia. It's fantastic. It's one of the most popular mushrooms of all. Here is a dried lion's mane. This is a dried cultivated lion's mane here. And it's kind of interesting. It hardens up, but you can just soak it in water and soften it if you buy it in the dried form. And then you can slice it up and cook with it. It has a nice kind of crunchy, delicious mouthfeel and flavor. And it's also very, very good for supporting healthy stomach health and reducing any inflammation that you might have in the stomach area, for instance, gastritis or even a gastric ulcer. So it's widely used for stomach upset or irritation throughout Asia. Reishi is really a fantastic mushroom, again, that is so beautiful. Here are some reishi mushrooms that I found actually back in Philadelphia, near Philadelphia, on a walk and a conference that Karis organized. And it's just such a beautiful creation of nature of the fungus here, 3 different ones on one tree. But this is a good species to use. Almost any species of reishi would be good to use. Excuse me. Now, here's an East Coast version of reishi. This is Ganoderma tsugi, and you can see how beautiful it is growing on hemlock. And here is our West Coast version of the same species, Ganoderma tsugi. This was a 17-pound Ganoderma tsugi that is literally the most beautiful mushroom I've ever seen, I think. And almost any species of Ganoderma that are reishi-like mushrooms can be used. And again, I discuss this in great detail in my book. So you don't have to necessarily buy a commercial product if you have reishi growing near you in the forest, then you can likely use that one. And again, reishi is often recommended for calming the spirit when we're agitated, when we're upset, eases anxiety for helping support our immune system and have an anti-cancer effect, boosts our immunity in general to fight infections or prevent infections, and chronic upper respiratory tract infections and allergies. There's another picture just showing how really gorgeous they are. One of nature's most beautiful fungal creations. And here's a kind of a split-capped reishi and an antler form that I found in the Amazon. I took this picture in the Amazon when I was there, and I was so excited to see reishi growing all over the place there. Here is a picture of about 5 species of reishi that I found in a Chinese herb shop. The black one, the Sichuanense, the big round one, and Lingzhi here, and others. Now, lion's mane, I jumped several ahead, sorry. Lion's mane is another gorgeous creation of nature, as you can see here. And here is another species. Lion's mane is in the genus Hericium. This is Hericium erinaceus, which is the one that is the most officially used one, the most commonly used. It's the most meaty one. It's the most substantial one if you want to cook it. Lion's mane is very medicinal, and it's getting a lot of research on it for mood disorders, for nerve growth factor, so repairing, perhaps increasing the body's ability to repair nerves, even if they're bruised or damaged, and also mood disorders. But they are also just as delicious as they are medicinal. Here are some other species like Ramosum and Coralloides. Hericium coralloides is very common in our area here in California. I've eaten them before, and they're also delicious, and they also can be extracted and made into medicines if you happen to have it growing near you. Neuroprotective, stimulates nerve growth factor for anxiety, and also there is a study showing that people had better memory when they took it for 6 weeks as a supplement versus, and then when I underwent some memory tests versus not getting the lion's mane. And again, stomach inflammation is a very important use for it. Now let's go on to psilocybin. Psilocybin is a very special type of fungal group. It contains alkaloids called psilocybin and psilocin, which bind into binding sites in our central nervous system that can temporarily, you might say, deactivate our default mode network. The default mode network in our nervous system and our brain is really the center in different areas of the brain. It's the part of the brain that is most concerned with defining who we are, our personality, and perhaps where our ego arises, our sense of self. So it temporarily, um, you might say, decreases the sway it has over us, so that we can then gain insight into some of the problems that we have, some of the early trauma that we might be storing, and allow us to open up and broaden our view of the world and what might be possible out there. So it's a miraculous medicine that has been used that we know about since the 1500s by the Inca and Mayans in southern Mexico, Central America, and even further south in South America. So there are accounts of it being used in the 1500s, and as a sacrament, as a sacred medicine. There are many mushroom stones. So there is a way to identify it. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but when you identify any mushroom in the wild, you should use as many characters as possible. In the case of psilocybin, they have purple spores, so you can take a spore print and it looks purple. It has a stretchy skin on some of them, so you can pull the pellicle away here. And they blue on the stems. There's a bluing reaction here and here. So, and there are other ways to identify psilocybin in the field. Also, they're of course, very widely cultivated now. Every day I get articles pushed to me about psilocybin. The California Senate just passed or just signed off on a bill to decriminalize psilocybin in California. And it is thought that it may pass the House and then go on to the governor for signing. So we may be on the brink in California of following Oregon to decriminalize psilocybin. I can tell you that there are groups of many guides out there that are maybe psychotherapists or psychologists or even psychiatrists who are now using psilocybin mushrooms in their clinical practice, along with psychotherapy and counseling and support as their guides that can help guide people to this early trauma and help them release it. So it's pretty miraculous. And I detail all of the studies that have been performed so far on psilocybin for their benefits for healing depression and anxiety, addictions, and so forth. So it's really just so amazing right now. One thing that I've been thinking so much lately is that in this regard of psilocybin is that you think about the Green New Deal, what's happening in our environment, and how much trouble we're in basically as a species, and how many other species that are under pressure or even dying off, going extinct. And when we think about that, and we think about the legislation that could be passed, like the Green New Deal, which even then they can't get that passed. But I don't think that's the answer. The answer right now, because they're saying that mass extinctions could happen within the next 50, 60 years. What is needed is a widespread global shift in consciousness, and it could be that psilocybin will play a natural mushroom will play a leading role in this consciousness shift, which is just so exciting. Here is a slide that Abby put in. This is a slide that I took. It's just a funny slide. I go to Santa Cruz to the Fungus Fair every year and give a couple of talks, and I put up a table showing all these different medicinal mushrooms in their habitat. If you're in Santa Cruz, I don't know about this fall, but next fall we'll probably start up again. So it's usually in January, the first or second week in Santa Cruz. Come and celebrate mushrooms with many thousands of other people. But somebody brought in a pink gelatin brain, and it just so happens that that penicillium grew on the brain, attacked it, and started eating it. And it turned out that it was very bright purple like this. So the pink and the blue and the background suddenly reminded me that, oh yeah, that's pretty psychedelic. So I put this out in front in the fair, and I typed up this statement on the front of it. This is your brain on psilocybin. Any questions? Or somebody brought some psilocybin mushrooms in right there. And so I said, this is psilocybin. This is your brain on psilocybin. Any questions? So it's just a joke, but it did remind me of that psychedelic days. So anyway, here's a summary of here's some other beautiful. This is Psilocybe semilanceata, and then over here we have cubensis, which is the most widely cultivated mushroom. Remember that each species of psilocybin has different levels of the alkaloids in it. So you want to, if you're judging how much mushroom to take for a personal journey or to microdose, I go into great detail on microdosing daily to increase productivity, mood elevation, obviously, feeling more connected with other people and certainly with the natural world in very small doses, which are not affecting our really ability to function in daily life. This is very widely practiced now. So, but also these other things, tobacco cessation, existential crises that could happen during cancer, and so forth. So if you're judging the dose, then you want to make sure to know what species you're imbibing, because some species could be 4 times as potent as the least potent type, which is cubensis, typically is one of the least most potent species. And again, history 3,500 years ago, we think that there are stones here, these mushroom stones, people celebrating the mushroom. And here's my classic reading list. Some of the wonderful books, if you want to read more, Soma is a wonderful book that celebrates Amanita muscaria and other mushrooms that are used throughout history by Gordon and Valentina Wasson. And Land of the Gods, that's a wonderful, wonderful book by Schultes et al. Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World, if you want to see more about psilocybin, by Paul Stamets. How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan, and Food of the Gods, Terence McKenna, who was the original psychonaut who heroic dosed psilocybin and really came up with, I guess, with the term heroic doses of psilocybin. So I think that's all. And I wanted to mention that our early bird discount for our course here, I would love to have you join us. It's going to be really fun. Also support BotanicWise. They're doing such an amazing job. I'm just blown away by the dedication and just what they're doing to bring people and community together online. It's so important for these times. And also, I've gone almost every year. I think I only missed 1 year of the International Herb Symposium south of Boston. And this year it's going to be online, and I'll be offering several classes, but please join us in our celebration that Rosemary Gladstar founded many years ago, the International Herb Symposium. So with that, I'll turn it over to Abby, and we can see if we have questions or other discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christopher. We definitely do have some questions, including somebody wanted to know what that code was. Abby, if you can put that in the chat for the discount. Might as well get to that because I can think of that. But we have questions like one was about lion's mane. Somebody said another mushroom expert was mentioning about using lion's mane raw in smoothie. Is that going to liberate the medicinal benefits or just fiber?
All mushrooms should be pretty much cooked. People might say, you can, yes, lion's mane is very tender. That's true. It's one of the most tender mushrooms out there, but I can tell you that it's better to cook it. Slice it and just stir fry it, or if you want to just blend it up with some water and just simmer it a little bit, just bring it up to a boil. It's better to do that because the fiber is much more likely to cause GI tract irritation or allergic sensitivity if it's not cooked. So a pretty much good general rule is always cook your mushrooms. There are a few minor exceptions, like you can slice porcini very thinly and marinate them in vinegar and olive oil and eat them. And that is practiced in Italy quite commonly. But otherwise, I would tend to at least cook them a little bit, even the most tender ones like lion's mane.
Great. Okay, so if I missed your question, you can put it again at the bottom here, because we did have questions as we were going along. How about sourcing? This is probably not something we can answer really very clearly yet, but how about sourcing psilocybin?
Yes. I wish, I mean, it will be widely available, I think, within the next year, especially if they pass the law in California. However, there are many growers now all over the country. People are growing in Jamaica, it's legal. So you might be able to, well, you can typically go online and make a connection somewhere. I can't just tell you, well, you can go down to Whole Foods and pick up a bag of like if you're going to Amsterdam, then you can just go into a store and you can pick out whatever you want in regards of psilocybin. But right now, you can grow your own. I can tell you that you can buy spores. If you go, you can hunt online for a company in Amsterdam that sells spores, and then they will ship it to you brown label, and they will send you instructions on how to grow psilocybin. Psilocybin is very easy to grow. It's one of the easiest mushrooms to grow, ironically, and especially azure essence. So I'd consider psilocybe azure essence, which is the most potent species. Cyan essence can be grown easily, and also psilocybe cubensis, which is widely, you can get spores, you can grow it. It's not that hard, indoors, even in tubs. So it's not hard to grow. That's one way to get it. It's very expensive actually right now, and it's getting more expensive. I detail a lot of other, how to use it, how to take it. For instance, you can powder it, the dried mushroom, and you can just wet your finger and put it in the powder and lick your finger off. And that's about 40 milligrams, 30 to 40 milligrams. And that's a good microdose. So I detail all of this in my book. And then I also make an extract. I make a psilocybin extract so that you can get a pharmaceutical sprayer that's available on Amazon that gives you 0.1 mil per spray, and so then you can exactly dose yourself each time with the same whatever amount you want. And then I tell you how to make the liquid extract in my book. So that's another really good way to make it and to extract it. I keep it in the freezer, but I just can't give you an easy answer about how to access it. You have to seek out your own sources, except you can get spores and spawn, and you are not spores, spawn, and you can grow your own.
Psilocybin is not a mushroom that's not cooked, though, correct?
You don't have to cook that one, no.
Yeah.
Because you're only ingesting a small amount.
Yeah. And then, do you have a favorite toe fungus remedy since you brought that up? So
I do.
Here.
I know what works. So there's a paper online that you can get if you search for it on Google Scholar. So what you do is you get a foot bath, get a pan and put the water in it from your tap as hot as you can get it, which might be about 108 degrees, 110, something like that. Put some salt in it and stir it in. And then you just basically put it on the floor on a towel and dip your toes in the hot water. The hot water at 108, 20 minutes will kill the fungus.
Wow.
And then what you do is you get a bottle of oregano oil online. This is the most potent herbal medicine against tinea, which is the toenail fungus. You get a bottle of essential oil. This one is, I like this brand. This is Telia. Telia oils, T-E-L-I-A. I buy a whole ounce bottle here, and they standardize it to thymol and carbacrol, which is what you want. You want to make sure it's high carbacrol or thymol. That will kill the fungus. Don't use it neat because it really irritates your skin. So you want to mix it about 20 to 30% essential oil with about 70 to 80% olive oil. And then you take a Q-tip and you just dip it into the oil or saturate the Q-tip with oil. And then you use the heat treatment daily or every other day for a few weeks, and that is going to kill pretty much all the fungus that's there. Now, just to make sure it doesn't get reinfected, you take that solution with the olive oil and thymol, and you swab you basically trim the top of your toenail off, and you swab it under your nail so that to make sure that no other fungus can get in there. And then I would take a little bit and rub it on your feet once a day to make sure that you're not getting athlete's foot or whatever. Because basically toenail fungus is just athlete's foot. You just let it go and it gets into your nails eventually. And then once it's in your nails, it's very difficult to get rid of. So that's a method that does work.
Back to cooking mushrooms. Mary has a really good question. She says, if you have to cook mushrooms, does that mean that dried and powdered mushroom blends are not worth the money?
Yes, I think that's true. You know,
unless they're dried extract, right?
Right. So some companies actually do dry the mycelium and the brown rice when they harvest it, and they just dry it and powder it. And no, I wouldn't buy that product. If it is not cooked and heat processed, I would not buy it. So they take the mycelium and maybe it has some brown rice residue, and they grind it up and they steam heat it, they process it so that and it's also not only important to heat the mycelium or the fruiting body that's ground up, it's not only important to heat it so that it doesn't cause digestive upset and it breaks it down more assimilable, it also releases the beta glucan so that it's bioavailable to our immune sensors. In the natural form, in the cell wall, beta glucans are bound tightly to chitin. Chitin is a polymer. It's another type of aminoglycan polymer that is not absolutely tough and not soluble at all. It's in crab shells. That's the main component of crab shells is chitin. So chitin and beta glucan are tied together intimately, and you have to break that chitin bond and release the beta glucans before it can really be fully active in your gut. So it's really important to heat it. Now, in my book, I detail how important that is, but also if you have a pressure cooker, that's the best way to process mushrooms like turkey tail and reishi, is because that will really break that chitin bond and it'll solubilize the beta glucans so that they can really become active in your body.
Great, awesome. Samantha's wondering about, can you take more than one mushroom that is suitable for anxiety, and how do you calculate the dosage?
Sure, like if you wanted to use reishi plus Hericium lion's mane, then that would be a good combination. I would mix it 50-50 to start with and see how it seems to work. Hericium or lion's mane doesn't need nearly as much cooking or processing as reishi, so you'd have to process them separately. I would put reishi in a pressure cooker if you had it for like say 20 minutes on high, and then let it cool down slowly, and then grind it up thoroughly, and then dry it in a food dehydrator and powder it. That process of making mushroom powders, cooked mushroom powders, are detailed with pictures in my book. And the hericium, the lion's mane, you can just simmer that for like 5-10 minutes, and that's going to break down because that's so tender. And then you could blend the two together if you wanted to. So
if somebody has a good source of capsules, they're not really up for doing all the cooking stuff.
Powders are better than capsules. Again, I would buy a bag of powder. If you don't want to make it yourself, Then can I mention the company
Yeah.
names?
Go ahead.
The two company names that I recommend, I'll mention three companies that I know personally. I'm not saying there aren't any other good companies out there. I'm just saying these are the companies that I know personally, and I know that they're great products and they're using good methods. And the first one is Mushroom Harvest in Washington. It's Mushroom Harvest and Mushroom Wellness. Mushroom Wellness is the retail version of it, and Mushroom Harvest you can still buy. Like you could buy a 1 pound bag, or you could buy an 8-ounce bag of turkey tail steamed and processed extract that's organically grown in a very pristine place domestically. So I recommend them for mushroom powders. And on the other hand, you've got as well, you have Real Mushrooms up in Canada who sell extracts. Those are a little different extracts. They don't contain the fiber as much as they are water extracted and then dehydrated with a carrier. So that's a little different process, but I think they try to do a good job. That's organic too. And thirdly, I would really, if you're wanting to buy mushroom growing supplies, or if you want to buy dried mushrooms, or if you want to even have fresh mushrooms shipped to you, say you had a party and you wanted to serve fresh lion's mane to everybody, you can order from Far West Fungi, and they are in they're in Half Moon, no, not Half Moon Bay, near Salinas, and they are fantastic. They're really fantastic. So they're the best source of organically grown, family-owned business that I know of for fresh and dried whole mushrooms. They're not necessarily processed into products. But if you want to make your own.
If you're going to have that big bag of powder on your counter, you can throw teaspoons of it into your smoothie, or?
Yes, I typically recommend a dose of 3 grams twice a day for if you're dealing with something active, or just for prevention, maybe 3 grams a day. That's about a level teaspoon, or a little bit lower than a level teaspoon. That's a very good dose to start with. And so I just take my Reishi powder, and I've got a little scoop that's exactly 3 grams, and I just take that and I put that right into my fruit smoothie. Or if I make tea, like in the winter, I make elecampane and licorice tea to keep my phlegm dissolved and so forth. And I always add reishi to that. And so if you make tea, if you make a smoothie, you make any type of a drink, you can add reishi powder to it. And that's really the best way to use it, and not in the capsule form. I don't like swallowing that many capsules. But if you like capsules, then they're available too.
I like the powder too. I agree with you. Ashley asks a good question. She says, what is your harvesting code of ethic?
I think if you're out in the woods and you're harvesting turkey tail, and you find a big log of turkey tail, or you see that there's quite a bit of it around, I would be careful. This is one of my this is something very important that I often bring up, especially to beginning mushroom hunters. And I see it all the time on the web. For instance, we have several Facebook pages where people are going out and picking porcini, and they're so excited to find porcini, and they go out there, and everybody's wanting to go out and hunt porcini and chanterelles. And then they show these trays and trays of porcini. They picked them all. Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't think that's a good idea. Always leave some. And how much you leave, that depends on how much there is there. But if I found 10 porcini and they're beautiful and just look so wonderful, I would pick half. I would pick half maybe, or it depends on your sensibility. If I notice that there's a lot around, then I might pick half. A lot of people pick all of them. I guarantee you that. So don't pick all of them, leave some of them. And if you're picking turkey tails on wood, the spores release into the environment, they wash away, and they start new colonies. That's very important, to leave at least half of the fruiting bodies.
Great. Terry says, can you tell us the acidic medium used in the extraction of psilocybin? Does this help bring out the constituents for deep dive more, like vinegar or lemon?
You can try that, yes. But alkaloids, yes, alkaloids can be solubilized if you blend them with a weak acid. Like berberine, what's found in barberry and Oregon grapefruit, you know what I'm talking about probably. If you brew a cup of golden seal tea and you want the berberine, which is an alkaloid, it's a yellow colored alkaloid, you want the berberine and you want to absorb it because you have an infection of some type or you have a lot of heat in your body, then what they do in China is they react the berberine in the natural plant, they extract it and they react it with weak acetic acid, or they react it with very weak hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid, and they make berberine sulfate or berberine hydrochloride, and that is a lot more absorbable by our body. So yes, with psilocybin, you could add a weak acid, which would be vinegar, obviously, and it's going to produce a salt that is then more absorbable than the free base form.
Robert says, you mentioned using mycelium medicinally and that a beta-glucan content of greater than 15% is most efficacious, but he has not seen any studies that show that high of beta-glucan content in the mycelium, only in the fruiting bodies. What's the deal, he says?
Yes, it turns out that, well, no, you can get up to 30% beta-glucans. I've tested it myself. I have a lab here and I do a lot of mushroom testing. I've seen mycelium that was grown on rice and to the completion, so that the mycelium consumed all of the grain. And also, not only that, but it's a very aggressive strain. It's a strain that's high in beta-glucan. I've seen up to 30%. So yes, but I will say, having said that, fruiting bodies usually have a higher concentration of beta-glucan than mycelium. That is true. However, having said that, I can tell you that the beta-glucan from mycelium is up to twice as bioavailable as in a fruiting body. Fruiting body has so much more chitin and is so much harder to digest than mycelium. So that's the balance. I discuss all of that with references in my book. But basically, yes, overall, fruiting bodies have more beta-glucan than mycelium. However, mycelium, the beta-glucan is more bioavailable. And it isn't true that you can only find mycelium that if it's optimally grown. For instance, if you grow mycelium in a liquid culture, so you're not growing it on grain, you're growing it in a liquid culture, and then you drain, once the mycelium is completely grown out, you drain all the liquid culture off and you have pure mycelium. You can easily get up to 30% mycelium if it's just pure mycelium.
Beta-glucan.
Yeah, beta-glucan. And it's also true that the world's most widely studied mushroom product for its anti-cancer effect is called PSK, polysaccharide crestin, which is completely derived from mycelium. It's 100% from mycelium. So there is a big discussion in the industry, is mycelium better than fruiting bodies? I don't think that's not a discussion that is going to go anywhere, because there's so much research showing that the beta-glucans in mycelium, it has many of the same properties, slightly different. So, why not mix, fruiting body with mycelium? That's another way to do it as well. But
Gabriel, sorry.
Go ahead.
Gabrielle's wondering if in the course you might be covering preparation, use, and dosage of psilocybin.
Yes, I will be detailing what guides typically use as microdoses, the whole range of it, and under what circumstances, as well as the therapeutic doses, the various ranges, and heroic doses. And I will definitely very in detail discuss dosages and what to expect when you take certain doses.
Okay, and Mary is asking about a little more details about the time and length of the class and the recordings. I'm going to jump in on that real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but typical BotanicWise class is 6 weeks long, or the course, the program is 6 weeks long. Christopher will teach the core classes once a week on Monday nights. They'll be live, but also replays available as long as BotanicWise is a thing. There's no expiration date, in other words. He'll teach class for 90 minutes, knowing Christopher, he'll go a little over. And then we'll have guest speakers on Thursdays, and they'll present on various topics that complement the core material from Christopher. So I think that's enough on that right now, but we have a couple more questions before we close. And then if I don't get to your question tonight, just remember that you can bring your question over to the community, and hopefully Christopher will have some time this week to pop in and share his knowledge. Let's see. Mary's mentioning she followed the link and see the sign up page, but there's no details as to class time or duration. That's because we're not officially open with the program, right? This is the, like, you know, you're excited about it and you want to jump in. And if you change your mind, you can certainly have a refund at any time up to 30 days into the program. There's another question. Can you make a vinegar tincture with raw mushrooms, or should you heat them first, or can you heat them with the vinegar? Says Martin.
Beta glucans are not they're not soluble in vinegar. They're not particularly soluble in vinegar. So I wouldn't, and you know, what are you going to get with vinegar? Maybe some alkaloids. The other active compounds are phenolic compounds, which have antioxidant properties and other properties, and also many terpenes like diterpenes and triterpenes. Those are very important in mushrooms too. Those are small compounds, much smaller molecular weight compounds. Those are pretty soluble in water, and especially hot water, and especially in a pressure cooker. Those are all soluble in water. And the terpenes and phenolics are soluble in alcohol, so you can make a tincture or a double extraction. That works well, but I don't recommend particularly vinegar. You're going to get a very weak product if you use vinegar, because none of those three major constituent groups are particularly soluble in vinegar.
Andy mentions that he's heard that you cannot take mushrooms with gout. Is it possible to incorporate mushrooms with a gout diet?
Yeah, I think it depends on the mushroom. I wouldn't say all mushrooms are contraindicated for gout. No. So I think it's, you know, mushrooms like shiitake, lion's mane should be absolutely no problem with gout. On the other hand, chaga I would avoid. I would avoid chaga, and I would avoid a few others that species that we haven't talked about. Reishi should be okay with gout. I don't think it's a problem.
And then the final question before we move to spin the wheel and choose our winner for the International Herb Symposium. Renata asks a huge question, and so I'm going to ask you to keep it short, Christopher. But what mushrooms are ideal for curing cancer?
Turkey tail and reishi to start with. I would always say that has the most research.
Awesome. That was succinct. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So Abby, would you like to pull up the slideshow again and spin the wheel? So everybody's name who registered is on the wheel, and Abby's going to spin it. Rub your magic mushroom to get
have some music. Da, 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 da.
Laura,
At least there's
oh. Yay, congratulations, Laura. We'll see you at the conference. And if you did not win, we have the link in the slideshow, which will be posted for the replay. So you can register soon if you haven't already. It's going to be over 100 classes, and availability to watch those classes is 18 months and then it expires. So it's going to be a grand fun event. It's the first big event that we've sponsored. So we're really proud to be sponsors for the International Herb Symposium, which is a fundraiser for United Plant Savers and Mushroom Savers. So I want to thank you again, Christopher, so much. We'll invite Christopher back in the summer, and later in the summer, he'll be back to share a little bit more with us. And then we're going to do the program. The program will be starting in July, sort of later July, after you get over your celebrations around the 4th of July. If you're in the States, I think celebrations are going to be a little wilder this year than last year. So we figured we better push it off a little, let everybody get over their hangover before they get serious again. So good night all, or afternoon, wherever you are.
Good night.
Thank you for attending. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Abby.